is riding on your tires.
I hate to drive in the rain. Really? That's when I trust my Michelins the most. Michelins? You think they're worth it? Even when the weather's fine, I'm glad I got Michelin tires. I'd rather save the money. Some things in life are more important. Could we take your car to pick up the kids? I insist.
Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires.
ESPN's America's Cup Update is brought to you by Hilton, America's business address.
I named this yacht Crusader. May God bless her and all who sail in her.
It was a grand day for Britain's Royal Thames Yacht Club as Princess Di unveiled that syndicate's new weapon in the battle to win the cup. And this time the star attraction wasn't just Princess Di. It was the new 12-meter Crusader to be helmed by world-renowned match race champion Harold Cudmore.
Ambition, effort, competition. They make the race for the America's Cup a noble challenge. They make Hilton America's business address. And now, they make Conrad International Hotels a new standard in luxury resorts. Like the fabulous new...
The stretch here at Churchill Downs, perhaps the most famous stretch in thoroughbred racing. It's tomorrow on Saturday. 16 three-year-olds hope to be the first ones across the finish line. Welcome back to Churchill Downs. I'm Greg Gumbel, joined now by Sharon Smith, and we were talking about those centers of attention on Saturday, the horses themselves, and let's run down the field.
Well, we will, and the horses are going to enjoy excellent track conditions, rather. So as we look at the field, we don't have to worry about who's going to be suited really by this track. Let us go to the horse that has the pole position as we begin our look at the field. On the pole is Ferdinand. Now, he is a handsome chestnut horse. He will go off, at least in the morning line, at 20-1. Magambo is 10-1. Wise Times, part of the mutual field, is 12-1. Bold Arrangement, the English horse, is 12-1, although he is not part of the mutual field. Icy Groom, Southern Appeal, they are 12-1, part of the mutual field. Vernon Castle has been made 30-1 in the morning line. Rampage has been made 20-1. Now, there are 8 more horses.
And the second half of the field, Broad Brush, the winner of the Wood Memorial, is at 10-1. Badger Land is at 3-1 and is the second choice. Wheatley Hall at 30-1. Snow Chief, 6-5 favorite. Bachelor Bow, 15-1. Groovy at 30-1. Zabaleta at 12-1, as is Bobby Forbes. And of course, when you come to the Kentucky Derby, every trainer, every owner thinks that his colt has an equal chance to win, but Sharon, some are more equal than others.
Well, absolutely, and people all over the country are placing their bets legally or perhaps just casually on the horse that they think is going to win the Kentucky Derby. And most of the money and the hopes will be pinned on 2 horses. There's almost no doubt about who will be the first 2 favorites at Derby post time. Their second choice, Badgerland, winner of the Flamingo Stakes at Hialeah, and Snow Chief, winner of the Florida and Santa Anita Derbies. In addition to their favoritism, the 2 share a characteristic. Neither has actually raced in 4 weeks. No Derby winner in the last 30 years has had such a long layoff from the racetrack. Snow Chief's trainer Mel Studi doesn't like the implied criticism when people point this out.
I believe I'm a horse trainer. That's what I'm paid for, and I believe anybody can race a horse into condition, and I'm trying to keep this horse at his best as long as I can. And if I'm wrong, I guess I'm wrong, but I believe I'm right.
Badgerland's trainer Wayne Lucas also believes he's right. Always a man to challenge tradition. He planned the horse's schedule months ago.
It seems to fit this horse. He had 3 mile and an eighth races in a row, so I would be doubt very seriously if he's going to be a short horse. I think the 28 days since the Flamingo are important to him. I think in this particular horse's case, he needed that.
No trainer will claim that he's scared of the competition, but both like their chances, as well they should. Lucas says the field has several interesting challengers.
I think it's a good race. It's a race with a lot of interest. It's a handicapper's race. I think the people that are really hardcore handicappers are going to have some fun with this one because we got a little bit of everything.
Mel Studi says there may be competition for Snow Chief, but not enough to warrant 16 entries. Does he consider it an insult that his horse didn't scare many other horses away?
Yeah, I do treat that as a little bit of an insult. I was hoping there was only going to be 10 because then I could get more seats for the Derby, but I'm going to just have to take my chance with the big field.
Well, Mike Battaglia not only will call the race tomorrow, here's the voice that you hear, he also is the man who established the morning line odds. You did make these two horses the favorite, as everybody agrees. You should have put a big gap between them and the third choice.
Well, and I really don't think that's any knock to the other horses. I think that's just an indication of how impressive Snow Chief and Badgerland have been.
About the only knock anybody's been able to come up with against these horses on their record is that 4-week layoff for each of them. The trainers say it's their business, it doesn't make a difference. What do you think?
Well, I think that if you look at Snow Chief's past performances, you'll find that he raced once in December, once in January, February, March, and April. So he had a month between races. He won all of those starts. I think that that may be what the best thing is for Snow Chief. I think that Wayne Lucas is one of the premier trainers in the country, and I'm not about to knock him. So I think that both trainers, Mel Studi and Wayne Lucas, know exactly what they're doing coming into the Derby.
Would you say even if it's a tiny bit of a mistake, it's not enough to bring the rest of the field back to them, or bring them back to the rest of the field, I guess?
Well, I would say that on their past performances right now, those two stick out, and I don't see any mistakes being made by either trainer.
Well, Mike is going to be commenting the rest of the half hour with us on some of the other horses, some interesting developments. We're going to talk about the English horse, and we will talk about the drug situation, which is interesting as well, Greg. So we will get to comments from the horse's mouth in a manner of speaking about the betting line odds of these horses.
I like the comment by Mel Studi, the trainer of Snow Chief. When asked how much he liked his horse, he said, if Snow Chief could cook, I'd leave my wife. But that's Mel Studi's opinion. Of course, this is a premier event in thoroughbred racing, and as expected, tickets for this event are at a premium.
But in terms of fixed seating, some 46,000 seats that we have here at Churchill Downs, they've all been sold out.
Churchill Downs President Tom Meeker says the tickets that run from $350 to $5,000 a box have been spoken for, and for a long time. There is a waiting list, and money's not the only criteria for selection. The applicants considered are closely scrutinized.
Determine if they have made a contribution to Kentucky, or in the case of Churchill Downs, if they support our racing program.
Now, that doesn't mean you can't get a seat at the Derby this year. There were 2 ads printed in a national newspaper, both selling Derby tickets way above face value. Example, this ad offered $35 tickets for $160 each, $45 tickets for $250 each, and a $100 Derby Day box going for a cool $1,400. In short, these tickets are like gold, and the people at Churchill Downs are protecting them accordingly. But be aware, you can be in historic Churchill Downs on Derby Day at a much cheaper cost. $20 gets you into the infield. $30 puts you in the garden. Lots of pretty flowers to be seen, but like the infield, it doesn't provide much of a view for the main attraction, the horses. Tickets at whatever level certainly are not a deterrent. Officials here at Churchill Downs are expecting upwards of 100,000 people on Derby Day. When Sharon and Mike Battaglia and I return to Churchill Downs, a look at a pretty good import and what's in a name as we continue our preview of the 1986 Kentucky Derby.
The horse who traveled the longest distance to be here, it would go to this one, Bold Arrangement, one of the best 2-year-olds in England last year. No horse has ever done quite what he's trying to do, win the Kentucky Derby after beginning his racing career in Europe. He was shipped to Kentucky 2 weeks ago and raced well to be 3rd in the Bluegrass Stakes. While he'll be without his regular English rider, Bold Arrangement gets one of the best in the world, Chris McCarron, who arrived in Louisville early to gallop the horse. McCarron was impressed with the way Bold Arrangement handled the Churchill Downs surface. On race day, he'll be especially careful in the starting gate.
I know in the starting gate we're going to try and go without a man, without an assistant starter in there by his head, because in England, very few horses over there are handled by an assistant starter unless they're very fractious. In England, what they usually do is lead them in, and the assistant starter will walk under the front doors, will step under the front doors and go on out the gate that way. Whereas here, the man jumps up on the platform and goes out the back.
Trainer Clive Britton points out that Bold Arrangement is healthy and frisky in his new barn area and is well designed physically to handle the hard dirt track of Churchill Downs.
No, he's all racehorse. I mean, he doesn't carry anything he doesn't need, which for me, to race on dirt is more essential. You know, the heavier topped horses probably would hit the dirt too hard, you know.
But does he have a chance, this English turf horse, making the switch to American dirt in the biggest race of all?
I would train the horse at home, and if I didn't think he had any chance, I mean, it's probably cost about £30,000 to put this deal together, you know, which is, you know, a lot of money to invest in a race.
You know, Mike, that horse has impressed a lot of people. People like his handlers. They're very nice people, but it's an enormous task for a horse.
Well, it really is. And first of all, I'd have to say that I really respect those people for even attempting bringing a horse over from England and running him over 2 different racetracks in the span of 2 weeks. I think it's very, very tough to do. I also think that bold arrangement will definitely improve into the Derby. But I think that he's hooking a much, much tougher field in the Derby than he did in the Bluegrass, so I don't think he's going to improve enough to be a contender.
There's one thing that people sometimes forget is that he was a very top horse in Europe last year in England. He was one of their very best 2-year-olds.
Well, he was, and I saw the film on 2 of his races, Sharon, and in both of those races, very surprising. One race was at 7 furlongs, the other was at a mile. Now, in both of those races, bold arrangement was in front with a quarter of a mile to go, and he was run down. He was beaten. And then he comes over here in the Bluegrass, comes from way back, and he closed ground. So a very, very different style of running he used here than he did in England.
Still, he's a very interesting horse, and if you're trying to pick your favorite right now, and you like things English, consider bold arrangement.
I would think so. Both Sharon and Mike are veterans of Kentucky Derbies here at Churchill Downs. For me, it's my second visit, and I truly believe that even if you're not a racing fan, everyone should visit Churchill Downs at least once. One of the interesting things you see walking through the Downs area is the people very studiously studying the names of the horses and checking out the names, and with very good reason. Sonny's Halo, Swale, Spendabuck, all interesting names. In fact, names are part of the fascination at a racetrack, any racetrack. Take, for instance, Snow Chief, this year's Derby favorite. He sounds like a winner. Or Bachelor Beau. Certainly there'll be more than just a few single men placing their bets on him. Wouldn't it be interesting if a horse's name reflected his or her owner's occupation? These horses are, no doubt, owned by doctors. Second opinion, and say, Bend Over isn't running until the 1st of next week. Lawyers had to be pleased when theirs ran 1, 2, 3. I Object, finishing 3rd behind Habeas Corpus and Double Jeopardy. Good-looking horse here, It's Your Water Pump, owned by a local auto mechanic. One federal judge could conceivably have his horses as an entry, sustained and overruled. And these beauties, on the other hand, and Waffle, you guessed it, owned by former politicians. What's in a name? Well, most everything, I suppose, and then again, maybe nothing at all. When we return to this 1986 preview of the Kentucky Derby, we will have a look at drugs. Welcome back to a windy day here at Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky, as we continue our preview of the 1986 Kentucky Derby. Now, the question of legal drugs. For the first time this year in the program, the bettors know exactly what the situation is, and Sharon has more on that.
Well, and it's important, too, because it really can tell you something about the race. The drugs involved, they're legal in Kentucky, now printed in the program for the first time, are Bute and Lasix. Butazolidine, a mild pain reliever, and Lasix, which is a diuretic which reduces the incidence of bleeding in a horse's lungs, very common and not a serious condition, although, of course, it can slow him down. Now, only Ferdinand and Bold Arrangement will have neither one. 3 of the horses will be on Lasix for the first time, and this is a drug that is commonly believed to dramatically improve performance, even in horses that do not bleed. Groovy last raced in New York where he couldn't legally use either Bute or Lasix. He can now, and he'll get both for the first time. So will Wheatley Hall, whose trainer Jack Vanberg believes they will help a horse who's improving anyway. Wheatley Hall hasn't won a stakes race yet, but Vanberg thinks he may be ready.
I don't know whether he can beat the top 2 of them or not. I don't know. You don't know till you go to battle with him. But I know this much, that he's got plenty of talent. We'll find out Saturday how deep it is.
And the Lasix may be an added advantage. Wise Times also gets Lasix for the first time after a minor bleeding incident at Keeneland. Whether or not a horse improves the first time on Lasix, favorite Snow Chief will not get it because trainer Mel Studi says he doesn't need it.
Oh, no, he has never bled in the past. I use Lasix in California on quite a few horses, but I don't use it unless the horse is a bleeder.
Well, Mike, Mel does say that the horse will go on Bute because all of his horses in California get it, but not Lasix. What do you think of this very common belief that first time on Lasix they go a little bit better?
Well, I'm not a trainer and I'm not a veterinarian, so I'm really not too sure what effect LASIK does have. I've heard the same thing that you've heard, that the first time they go on the LASIK, it can make the horse perform a little bit better and maybe carry their speed a little bit further. With the 3 horses that are on the LASIK for the first time in the Derby, though, I don't think it'll make that much of a difference in this year's Derby.
It is a help, though, to the bettors, because every little bit of information helps.
Oh, I agree with that 100%. The more information that you can get to the bettors, no matter what kind of information that is, I think that's better off, and I think racing's better for that.
Yeah, so the 112th Kentucky Derby will give the people here at the track and now you a little extra information about which horses might be your picks.
All right, and our thanks to Mike Battaglia for joining us on this preview of the 1986 Kentucky Derby. And when we return after a final break, a word with Jack Whitaker of ABC Sports. Stay tuned.
It's getting dark. You and Timmy better be heading home.
Dad, what are you worried about?
Welcome back to Churchill Downs on the eve of the Kentucky Derby, and with me is Jack Whitaker of ABC Sports. And you just said this is Kentucky Derby number 15 for you. Which one is the most memorable for you?
Well, Greg, I think the first one's always your most memorable, and my first one certainly was. It was 1965 when Lucky Debonair won with Bill Shoemaker. What made it memorable were several things. First of all, there was a fire broke out right here, and the wind was blowing the way it's blowing now, thankfully, away, or we'd have had a bigger news story than we had a sporting event. But that held up the start of the race by an hour. So we had to fill that hour, and we're using all the material that we were keeping for the end of the race. We got through it all right, had a great interview with Shoemaker, and we went back to the trucks when it was all over, and everybody had a long face because there had been a second fire in a sewer in Baltimore and cut out all our audio lines. So nobody heard a word we said from the moment the race began until the end. So I knew right away horse racing was a little different.
Has it been your experience that when you prepare for the race, you have more fun concentrating on the favorites or the long shot?
Well, it's I could think it's a combination. Long shot sometimes. It's wherever the story is. Wherever the owners are fun, wherever the trainer is fun, wherever that's what appeals to all of us, I think. And you have to take into consideration all of them because you never know what's going to happen.
And what's your feeling the story is this year at the Derby?
Well, I think the story this year, unfortunately, is dosage. That's why I'm hoping Snow Chief wins.
The dosage is a pretty complex situation and something that we can't get into right now, but are you one for predictions? Would you get into that before the Derby?
Well, again, I think the little guy has done everything asked for him. He's won on the West Coast. He's won here in Florida in all kinds of different tracks. He can win on the lead. He can come off the pace. He looks good. So I'll go with him. I think there are 2 or 3 or 4 others that could win, and won't be surprised if the longest shot in the field wins.
The Black Bullet, as he is called.
Yeah.
Jack Whitaker, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
You're quite welcome.
Sharon, who do you pick for the 1986 Derby?
Well, Greg, I would think it would be foolish to pick anybody other than Snow Chief and Badgerland, but you don't bet on somebody who's a favorite. So if you're checking a long shot, I would pick Magambo, mainly on his good looks, which is the worst way in the world to pick a winner of a race. He's a magnificent-looking horse and can be brilliant. Interestingly, Jack mentioned dosage. He doesn't qualify there either. It's an analysis of their pedigrees to see who can go 1.25 miles the first Saturday in May as a 3-year-old. That, in a nutshell, is it. Magambo allegedly doesn't qualify, but, boy, he sure is the best-looking horse in the race.
And, of course, there is Wheatley Hall, who is thought by many, yourself included, to be a good-looking horse and perhaps could be a surprise, if there is to be a surprise, in the 1986 Kentucky Derby. The weather will be very good, between 65 and 70 degrees and a sunny day. We hope you enjoy the 86 Kentucky Derby. For Sharon Smith, I'm Greg Gumbel.